And the ghost rocket phenomenon is one of the biggest mysteries of, I would say, because it's such a weird but still very coherent phenomenon. Just, flying, making turns, landing on lakes, mostly in the Nordics, in broad daylight, multiple witnesses. It goes down and nobody finds anything except for maybe, some kind of crater, like in the early ones in 1946. And actually, in one of the most famous one from 1946, the Swedish military, it takes thousands of samples from the mud at the lake floor to see if there is any kind of chemicals or stuff, and they didn't find anything unusual. So, if the object would have disintegrated completely by maybe some chemical process or unknown process, dematerialize itself, you could expect it to leave some residues. But who would have made that such an object anyway? I mean, that's really complex. I mean, 1946, we're talking about just post-war technology, and yeah, there was some secret technology, but I mean, most of it we know today. And I haven't heard about self-dissolving things like this that can fly and maneuver and land. But you quickly come to speculation when you think about this, and that this is exactly why we need Operation Arctic Seals. We are going to go down and find an object. In 1946 and onwards, there was thousands of observations by people in Scandinavia where they saw rocket-like object or egg-like or cylindrical objects in broad daylight, typically July, August in Scandinavia, and went down into lakes. And several of these lakes were investigated, for example, by the Swedish military. They did dives, they took samples, they did all sort of analysis, but they were completely inconclusive. Evidence of any sort. There were like a few cases. There were craters on the bottom, and like you could see the seaweed being splattered and thrown away, and so there has been some violent forces connected to these. And typically the earlier observations had more of these violent kind of crashes or uncontrolled landings, if you will, while the later ones, such as the 1947 one, looks more like a controlled descent of some kind of guided object. According to observers, the object actually didn't just come in a glide path or something like that. It actually turned quite a steep turn, and this is has been seen in other cases of ghost rocket type of things going down into lakes, that they actually seem to be very controlled, and they turn in a small airspace, meaning they have to have very good control surfaces, or be very light, and these are characteristics not typically connected to rockets, because they have small control surfaces. They're made for high speed, and they can navigate. They can turn in, say, ballistic speeds, but certainly not cruising in a, say, propeller aircraft type of speeds, and then make abrupt turns like 180 degrees, and then make a control landing on a lake. So this is really weird. And I would say that perhaps the whole rocket part of the ghost rocket phenomenon is just an interpretation by the people that saw them, especially just after the war, in 1946 and 47, most of them. is that that's the closest type of object they knew about. So that's why they, and that's how the phenomenon came to be known as ghost rockets. But nobody knows, and nobody have actually proved that these are rockets. It's given the flight characteristics and of the observations. There are things pointing to that these are not rockets, but they might look like that, and they might in some aspects behave like rockets, but they don't seem to fit that very well. In any case, what a lot of people, including ourselves, has dreamed about is actually a recovery of one of these objects, because it's plausible that at least some of these objects, at least those that were not destroyed on landing, and most of the observations speak of intact objects sinking down into the lake. So there should be some object down there. And most Scandinavian lakes, at least, or Nordic, I would say, because Finland was also involved here, had several of these. They tend to have a lot of loose bottom, muddy bottoms, where any object that have some weight or some higher density objects, they would actually sink down into the mud. This is really interesting, and also one of the reasons why we used during previous expeditions in 2023, we deployed boats with a sonar, and the sonar did actually detect a cylindrical object, say 12 meters long, 22 meters depth, roughly, which actually could very well correlate to this object that was observed in 1947. And what we wanted to do already in the previous expedition, of course, is to get a ROV down and look at these. But the problem is that we couldn't see them. Or I would say. We could see some rocks, and we could find them again later and so on. But this one didn't seem to, want to show itself. And one reason could be, which we think is the reason, is that it actually is just below the kind of mud floor. And that's why, and a sonar can penetrate the mud to some extent, but your eyes can't, and not a camera. So this is what we want to do, and this is what we're hoping for, that we will actually reveal what this object is. They can also use a magnetometer to look at the magnetic field, because if it is a metallic object, which would make it very highly interesting compared to some big logs or something, that of course increases the probability that it's something exotic. Even a rocket could be a rocket, even though the observation doesn't really support that so well. But we are going down anyway, and we're gonna have a look to see what is the thing. We call it the thing because it has eluded us, and we want to get it. We want to have a look at it, and of course, if we find it and it's something really interesting, then we can actually retrieve it, and we really hope for that. And if we could conclude that this is some kind of physical representation of the ghost rocket phenomenon, we don't know. We simply don't know what it is, and we're gonna find out. And this is, I would say, a tremendous opportunity, and it's amazing if we could really find the truth about the ghost rocket phenomenon. It might, whatever is there might, not be connected. It might be connected. We'll see. But it's really exciting. I think it is. And that's why I'm part of it. We're people that like to find truth about things. And this is what we're going to try to do now. And if we would solve, in the coming days, actually be able to solve the ghost rocket mystery, that would be a sensation. Let's hope for the best. People, in the area, they come forward and they want to contribute. It's like a big community, and they think this is really interesting. It's part of their history. And of course, it's a little bit extra part of the history, since the main observer of this 1947 case, he was to become the mayor of the municipality of Röros, which is the whole area. And so he was considered to be a really credible witness and a serious, man that wanted to find the truth himself. He's long gone, but we're gonna try to help him, and in a way, even if he's gone now, to solve the mystery. So stay tuned, and hope you enjoy this, and see you again soon.